Hi, and welcome to the Health Begins with Mom show. I am Dorit Palvanov, your host. On this podcast, I will share insights and interviews on health, parenting, and explore the question of what does it take to thrive as women, wives, and mothers. Now, let's get going with today's episode. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Health Begins with Mom podcast. This is Dorit Palvanov, your host. Before we get into today's episode, I wanted to talk a little bit about you. I wanted to talk about your life, the way you show up in how you live, love, play, work, mother, and parent. Are you happy? Do you feel like you're thriving? Do you feel successful? Do you feel proud of yourself? Or of the way you raise your family and show up in your life? Do you feel good in your body, with regards to your energy levels, with how you organize your day? Or do you feel like a panting dog at the end of most days, like you are running around and around in circles and never having enough time to finish anything? Does this sound familiar to you? Do you feel endless exhaustion, moodiness, feel like you're constantly hormonal or in all sorts of pain, looking at yourself in the mirror with disgust and shame, having a flaky hair, flaky skin, disconnected from yourself, from your body, feeling chronically unappreciated, lonely, constantly yelling at your kids, and never feeling like you have enough of anything, enough money, enough time, enough stuff? Do you feel like all you do is survive the day instead of thriving in your days? I certainly believed and felt like that at some point in my life. And the only reason I bring this up is because I have been that woman not too long ago. For the most part, I actually had everything I needed. I had the house, I had the marriage, I had my kids, I had my work, but something was missing. And the missing piece was me. I wasn't present. I was doing all the things. I was showing up for the logistics, the cleaning, the laundry, the dinners, the cooking, just, doing stuff that I'm quote unquote supposed to do, but going to bed every day feeling depleted. Admitting this wasn't easy. I had to be willing to be uber honest with myself and say out loud that slowly, I was wasting my life away. The question to ask here is when? When will you wake up and decide that it's time for change? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, but expecting a different result. And that is not my quote. That's Albert Einstein, the genius. When will you decide that it's time to take care of you? When is it time to give yourself what you've been giving to others all this time? I want you to know that it is possible to change your current reality if you feel like you're not living up to your truest potential. If you feel like you're wasting your life like I did. But where do you start? Here's an amazing exercise for you to do at home or once you have some time for yourself. First of all, I want you to pull out a paper. And I want you to start by writing out what it is that you really want or, the things that would be nice to have. So a journal prompt could be, would be nice if, and then start writing, Do this exercise even if it feels like you are fooling yourself or wasting time doing it. I want you to do it anyway. This is your doorway to seeing what is possible. Because I can tell you that if you can write it, it can be achieved. Period. Then, after you're done, I want you to reach out to me and I want you to share with me what you've come up with. I want to invite you to chat with me and share with me what it is that you need right now in order to feel good in your life. What is it that you need but don't dare to admit to anyone, not even to yourself? As you know, I work with women and mothers who are ready to step out of their own way. Women who are ready to define what it is that they need, voice it loud and clear, and then create the reality that they want for themselves. In order for this to happen, you need to have the mindset down. You need to have your health in check. You need to learn how to organize your life around your fluctuating hormones so that you can reap the maximum of each day. This is super important if you are a busy mom, especially if you are a busy mom who doesn't have time to waste. So whether you're running a business, organizing an event, getting ready for an important speech that has the potential to change your entire career, or even if you're raising small kids, juggling a million things all at once, you need to learn how to move through life in a female body by embodying femininity, by embodying sexuality, sensuality, mastering how to regulate your big and scary emotions. And all of that is so, so important, because the truth is that we're not men. And it is absurd, in my opinion, that we women try to move through life like men, and then we feel like shit. So this is because we're women, and women do life differently. So I encourage you to do this exercise and then reach out to me, and we can have a chat about what it is and what it is that you need and how I can help you to have more of what you want by doing less work, less hassle. So I would like you to reach out to me. My email is dorit@healthbeginswithmom.com. You can always find me on Facebook. I go under Dorit Palvanov. All right, so this ties beautifully with today's topic. Today we're talking about respect and peacefulness in parenting. And you and I know that it all has to start from within, right? We cannot respect other people, even if those people are our kids, unless we respect ourselves. Respectful parenting begins with the inner work. So as a parent, you know that having children is one thing. Enjoying the process of raising them is another thing. But raising confident, resilient, self-reliant, independent, resourceful, explorative children with a growth mindset is a completely different ballgame. It requires intention, time investment, being present, and resourcefulness on our own part as well. Right? So this is not an easy task nowadays, where we have a million things pulling at us in different directions. We have our full-time jobs, careers, activities, food planning and food prep, dishes, laundry, household stuff, kids, school, driving them to and from, your marriage, your friends and family, holidays, and so on and so forth, right? The list is endless. No wonder why so many of us, women and moms, are feeling like we are constantly out of balance or searching for balance every single day. The shiny object syndrome is eluding us to sometimes neglect, unintentionally of course, the things that matter the most, which is enjoying your life and the life or lives you have created. We all want what's the best for our kids. I think the vast majority of parents want to do a good job. Most of us want to raise people that we need more of in this world, right? And not the opposite. I think the best approach to this would be realizing that raising children will trigger you. It will bring up a lot of gunk from your past, things you haven't dealt with yet. And in a sense, viewing parenting as an opportunity for personal growth and your kids as your teachers or gurus, as some people say. One website I really enjoy and is super helpful for me is theparentingjunkie.com. And here's a little piece from that website that I really resonated with. So it goes like this. If you believe that parenting is a journey of transformational growth for the parent more than for the child, if you believe there are no bad children, only children who are having a hard time, if you believe no matter what situation you're in, empathy will help, if you believe that good parenting means striving for connection, if you believe that connected parenting does not come naturally, but demands intense levels of commitment and deliberate practice, well then, my friend, you and I are already best buds. So today on the show, I'm chatting with Avital Schreiber, the creator of the Parenting Junkie, who is a mindful parenting coach and imperfect mom to 3 little spirited gurus. Avital's work is dedicated to helping parents to love parenting and to parent from love. The Parenting Junkie publishes weekly videos designed to inspire, inform, and uplift the runs, courses, and memberships dedicated to prioritizing play, presence, and peace in our children's lives. A Huffington Post contributor with an audience in all 4 corners of the globe, her work is endorsed and recommended by the leaders in the parenting space, people like Dr. Shefali Sabari and Dr. Laura Markham. So here's what we cover today on the show. We talk about why is it important to respect our children. We talk about how to apply the respectful and peaceful parenting approach with regards to food and meal times. We talk about the gardener and the carpenter approach to raising children. How is it that our children are our teachers, and what are we learning from them? We talk about conscious feeding and feeding children with patience, love, and good sense. Feeling in control over your buying power with regards to food. We talk about the importance of setting an atmosphere that we create when we eat and empowering our kids to feel really good during meal times. We talk about the division of responsibility in feeding. We talk about the fact that kids want to thrive and succeed and how we can tap into their inner wisdom and help them with that. We talk about prioritizing play as a pillar of childhood. And also we get into talking about some of the benefits of boredom and doing nothing. So really today's show is full of insight and inspiration and a lot of good stuff. I just wanted to mention another thing. All the links to the stuff that we mentioned today on the show are linked up below in the show notes. So please feel free to reach out. You can find the show notes over at my website, so healthbeginswithmom.com/EP-4T, so 40. So without further ado, here is my interview with Avital Schreiber. Hi, Avital. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Dorit. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited because this is a story. In my quest of, peaceful parenting, and when I was introduced to this whole concept and perspective of Dr. Shefali Sabari, the conscious parenting, obviously you go on YouTube and you start, and then I saw a lot of your videos, but then I'm like, okay, cool, cool chick. And then a few weeks ago, one of my clients, she said she's a part of your membership community. I'm like, oh, really? Like, tell me more. And then I see her face. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like, so it's so interesting. And then we found out that you're also from Israel and you speak Hebrew just like me. So it's kind of like, I feel I'm at home. It kind of feels like family now.
I love that. Fantastic.
All right. So, today's interview is going to be a lot of fun. We have Avital Schreiber. Is this how you pronounce your last name?
Schreiber.
Okay, Schreiber. And in the intro, you guys have heard what the entire introduction. But before we start into, talking about respectful parenting and loving our children, and really treating them as human beings, I want to know, what are you loving about being a mother right now?
Oh, that's such a great question. Okay, what am I loving about being a mom right now? Well, where to start? I really enjoy my kids. I really enjoy seeing their development and growth. One of the things that is really fun right now is my 23-month-old. She's about to turn 2, and there's something so magical about that age. At least for my kids, it's around that age that they start to develop language. All of my children have kind of spoken, quote unquote, late on the schedule. Like, it's kind of ridiculous that we have that schedule, but you know what I mean? Like towards the time they're 2.5, and it suddenly explodes. So she's suddenly saying so many things and pointing out so much, and just watching that natural development and watching how she's engaging with the world and how she's exploring it. And, the initiative that she takes, the agenda that she has for herself, the agency, it's such a good reminder for me with my older children at how children come to this world with their own potency, right? And it's very powerful to watch a baby learn to walk or learn to talk, because really that type of intrinsic motivation and creativity doesn't go away unless we dampen it, unless we kill it, right? But it helps me to kind of, I call it borrowing from the rich and giving to the poor, borrowing from that richness that we feel with our babies and our toddlers and giving it to our older children, that trust, that wonder, that awe at watching them develop and enjoying those stages. And that's something I'm just really enjoying at the moment.
I love that answer. And I'm just curious also, because it's so rare for me to interview someone with 3 kids, because I also have 3 kids. So how is it different, the experience of, having the third child, as opposed to, raising, a first, just one child, let's say? Mm-hmm. Like, how is it different for you, like in terms of, your motherhood, your femininity, your womanhood, like this entire experience? How is it different for you?
Yeah, there are so many ways to answer that question. Well, first of all, I was only a parent to one for 2 years, and then I had my second. So it wasn't that long that I had only one child. But I have found, and I think this has been true for so many of the parents I speak to, that your first child is often your catalyst for growth, is often your biggest challenger, is often your biggest mirror, that pinpoints all your most painful areas that you need to grow in, that brings up the biggest kind of tensions and stresses for you, and anxieties and fears. It kind of all, you birth the child, but you yourself are birthed as a parent when you first become a parent.
Right.
So it's a very dramatic event to have your first child, and it's often a very dramatic relationship. I didn't find that with my second and third. My second and third, I had kind of gone through that gut wrench awakening, which is ongoing. It will continue my whole life, but I was far more situated. I was far more relaxed into my role as a parent, and to expect. You have a lot more information about what to expect in childhood development. Of course, every child is different, but you just know what it means to give birth, to breastfeed, to night nurse, to wake up, to be tired, to be serving, all of the things that are on the technical level, and then of course on the emotional level too. So for me, I just found it although I was a pretty relaxed mother with my first, I was just that, exponentially more relaxed with my second and third. And as a result, the relationship was also just, far more natural. I think it's far less likely for me to be triggered by my second and third children than it is for me by my first, who is my teacher in the biggest way.
Yeah. And I have to ask you, since we spoke about the third baby and then the first, we second baby number 2. I don't know for you, but this is like, oh my God. And, almost all my clients, that have 3 kids, they complain about that. So can you just, it has nothing to do. It has a lot to do with the interview today, but can you just a little bit, can you expand about this, the relationship with baby number 2, and how is it different?
So I'm curious what you mean by that. Just expand for me what you mean by that.
So for example, for me, my experience, it's a good question. For me, when my first daughter was born 8 years ago, like you said, I have gotten a new status, right? From being, this young lady, I became a mom. So it was a totally new experience for me. So it was like a new being, and stepping into that was extremely difficult for me personally. I felt pretty good my second also came 2 years after, but when she came into the picture, I felt like everything I've built and I've worked so hard for, it's sort of like, I don't know if collapsed is the right word. It was challenged greatly. She was just like a lot of resistance, a lot of crying constantly. And until this day, she's my most challenging child. And I'm not saying that in a judgmental way. I know that she was sent to me because I'm the right mother for her. I know that. But I was just curious to know if you also have that dynamic of, child number one is being sort of like, not easy, but more kind of easygoing. And then there's number three that for the most part, I think they're also easier to manage. But then number two, I see, at least in my family and also with the parents I work, number two is definitely like challenging for many parents. So I'm just curious if you experience that as well.
That's so interesting. For me, temperamentally, it's a little bit the opposite. Like my first and third are more intense characters. And my second child is an extremely easygoing person. He's really just a very chilled kid. So for me, I didn't experience that with my second child, but I also think it is a common experience. And one of the reasons is that, going from 1 to 2 is a very difficult jump. I think for many people, more so than going from 2 to 3, And I think, obviously, temperament has everything to do with it, right? The child that comes into the world, whoever that person is, maybe we have goodness of fit with them and maybe we don't. Maybe it's hard for us to handle their character and handle their personality, and they trigger within us a lot of things that are difficult. So, I think it's a lot to do with temperament, and it's a lot to do with life circumstance, like, do we feel financially secure when we have our second child? Do we feel that we have enough help? Do we feel we have enough support? Is our career on a path that we're comfortable with? Adding another child is doubling the workload in some ways. And certainly the emotional workload is doubled because it's another relationship to maintain. So I think for a lot of people that can be, extremely, extremely testing, extremely overwhelming.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. I didn't want to leave number two,
No, number two.
unattended. All right. So you are the founder of the Parenting Junkie and parentingjunkie.com. And I'm always curious to know the behind the scenes and what drives people to do the work that they do in the world. So before we dive deeper into talking about your approach in raising children, can you share the reason why and how you got to do this work?
Yeah, totally. So I'm a designer by trade. I come from a background of identity design, branding, packaging, illustration, books, advertising, all sorts of things like that. And I went to design school. I worked as a designer. And when I first became a mom, I was full-time employed designing in-house for a firm. But I was kind of resistant to the idea of having children. I got married very young. And for years, I was kind of like, I'm not sure this whole thing is for me. Like I was not one of those people who goes gaga over babies and who's, like, oh, I always wanted to be a mom, and who just felt that biological pull. And that wasn't it for me at all. And in fact, I feel that most of the parents around me, with all my love and respect for them, they were doing a pretty bad job marketing this role, because they seemed so tired and frustrated and just like, at every opportunity trying to find a way to get away from their kids. And I was like, well, what's the point? Why do you have them? So parenting seemed kind of, and it still does, it seems to be an experience of victimhood for many people. And I was kind of determined I'm a kind of philosophical person in that sense. I tend to go from an intellectual place to an emotional place usually. And I kind of said to my husband, I was like, look, if we're going to do this, and I had decided I did want to do it, I was like, I don't want to skip this part of life. I don't want to skip this human experience. But if I'm going to become a parent, I need to know there's an alternative way to feel about it and to experience it and to do it. So I started reading all, whatever I could get my hands on when I was pregnant with my first. And that's when my kind of, studying journey, self-learning journey began. And I became very passionate about it. And even just in the early days, things that were alternative in my community, things like cloth diapering or elimination communication or baby-led weaning or all sorts of things that were not common around me, kind of drew me in and became a point of conversation that was repetitive for me with other people. So people would be like, well, why are you diapering him that way? Why are you feeding him that way? Why are you talking to him that way? So it became this topic that I was reading a lot about and talking a lot about. And eventually I started a blog, just a blog, the parentingjunkie.com. I started making videos because I didn't want to repeat the same question, the same answers again and again. I just wanted to kind of make a video and explain my stance, my very radical, it appeared at the time, stance. And that's how it was born. It was born really just as a side project, as a hobby, as a passion, a passion baby. But it grew in a way to a place within my own heart, within its following as well, but really in my own heart, to a place where I realized this is what I'm most passionate about and this is what I love doing. And when I started getting feedback from other people that it was helpful to them, I started to learn more about online business and about how I could maybe transition there. And about 2 years ago, I left my design job and turned the Parenting Junkie into a business as well as a passion. So now I'm one of the lucky, privileged people who can say that I don't work a day in my life because I love what I do. And it's become a fusion of both of those things.
I love that. Avital, really, honestly, I love that. You know why? Because I just wish all parents would have entered parenthood just doing that kind of inventory, like asking yourself that question: am I built for it? Do I want this? And if I do choose to do this, then what am I willing to learn? And also, what am I willing to let go of? I think it's so profound. Thank you so much for sharing that. So I also want to talk to you about notes from your child. This is I love this. We're going to expand more about that. So here's how I experience this. Every morning I'm getting a love note from my daughter. And I know, unfortunately, I couldn't choose all three of them, but I've chosen the child that gives me the hardest. Wink, wink. We kind of talked about it.
I don't know who that is.
You know what? I can tell you, just seeing the email coming from her, using her name, and then using, the way she calls me is mommy. It just, I don't know. I know that this is not her. I know it's fabricated, obviously. But it does something to me. And I love that I get it first thing in the morning, because when I open my computer, I usually check my email in the morning. It's it moves so many parts of me. Sometimes it's a huge stab in my belly because you're oh my gosh, I just did that yesterday. So can you talk a little bit about what inspired you to do this, and also explain to listeners what it is and how it can help their relationship with their kids?
Sure. So you're touching on a little bit of a pain point for me, because it's one of the areas of my business I haven't managed to maintain the way I'd like to. It really should be a daily thing, and it isn't currently. But I'll get back to it. Notes from your child is a project where basically I write you a note every day. You get it in your email, and when you sign up with the name your child calls you and the name of your child. So it comes into your inbox. Say your child's name is John. You get an email from John, and it says, "Hi, mommy," and it's just a very short thought for the day. This came, first of all, I was inspired by a project, I forget who it's by, but someone super successful who did notes from the universe. And he was sending these spiritual notes from the universe. Of course, we all know that I write these notes, and we all know that he wrote those notes from the universe. But when it's a game that we play, right? It's a game that we play where you suspend your disbelief for a moment that it's from me, and you accept it as a note from your child. And really, I think where this came from is the fact that our children send us messages about what they need and what they want, but we're not able to hear those messages usually, right? They come through difficult behavior, they come through resistance, they come through pushing back, and it's so hard to stay the course of peaceful parenting. It's so hard to keep coming back to connection when we're faced with that kind of trying behavior, with that kind of pushback. And I felt sometimes from my son who challenges me in that way, I felt like I wish he could just express it in a way that was inspiring. I wish he could just express it in a mature way. I wish he could adult, I wish he could be an adult. But you know what, mommy, what I really need from you right now is a hug, or you know what, mommy,
right.
It really means a lot to me. Right, exactly. But but sadly he can't, right? So I was kind of thinking, well, what if he could? What if we could put, those little tidbits of research, of science, of psychology, of spirituality, of inspiration, of motivation into the mouths of our children, as a way of kind of just helping us parents to remember that that's the message that they really want to send us, and yeah, that's how it was born.
Oh, I love that. Like, Avital, I'm telling you, just it puts so much perspective back into me, because my husband and I both, and I think a lot of parents are like us, we are very much into personal growth. Like, we have books over books about this. And I feel like it's like a reminder, right? That everything you're learning with regards to growing yourself actually could be applied and should be applied with your children as well, right? So I remember there was a note about abundance and financial, like your relationship with money, your relationship with yourself, and how that is projected on our kids. So I think for me, for example, the way I experience it, it's like a nicer, softer way of sharing with parents that really your children, our children, they're perfect just the way they are. Really, the problem is never with them. It's really an opportunity to look within and grow ourselves before we, we sort of look onto them and seeing where they're flawed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
So I also, like, I've seen so many of your videos, and I think you have hundreds of them on YouTube. And this topic of respectful parenting repeats a lot. So I wanted us to talk about that. And I also wanted to just share a little story of how just sort of having that perspective, how it shifts things in my personal life, for example. So my baby, I mean, she's number 3. And obviously, like, at the end of the day, I'm so tired. I'm so drained. I don't have energy for anything. I just want all of them to just go upstairs, shower, and just go to bed as quick as possible. And so for a few days, I was like, okay, let's go. Like, you're rushing, because then I know I have to put them to sleep, and then I have to get back to work. And so, like, for a few weeks, I've noticed I was really disconnected, connection-wise with them. And when I was showering my baby, she would scream a lot, and I found myself like forcing a lot. But then I listened to one of your videos, I think the last one, where you talked about how you feel like it's never working and it's all a waste of time, and I think something like that. And you just shifted that perspective in me. And just yesterday, I just did things differently. I spoke to her more. I looked more in her eyes. I was more present. And yes, it took a little bit longer, but you know what? It didn't take an hour longer. It took maybe 10 minutes longer. Like, overall, if I'm really honest with myself. And you know what? Today in the morning, first of all, she went to bed willingly. And then she woke up and she had such a great mood. And then my husband is like, oh, like, she's so happy today. What changed? And I'm like, that changed. So can you talk about this approach of respecting our children, and why is it even important? Because I can tell you, from where I'm coming from, seeing children, it's like, oh, just forget about it. They're small, they're little, they don't understand anything. That is the kind of the approach that we were growing up with. So can you elaborate more on respectful parenting?
Yeah, sure. I love that story. Thank you so much for sharing. That's really beautiful. And it makes my work so worthwhile when I hear how it can shift something in a relationship and in someone's home. So yeah, and I get nervous using this terminology: respectful parenting, peaceful parenting, conscious parenting, because they all kind of have their own baggage and weight and gurus that are connected to them and books that are connected to them. And respectful parenting is often associated with Rai, and conscious parenting with Buddhism and spirituality. And, there's a lot of kind of, for those of us who are in it, undertones. But I think if I could kind of categorize my approach, which is not dogmatic, and which is not just a one-size-fits-all, and I don't look at it as only one way of being a respectful, conscious, connected, peaceful parent. But you ask kind of what's the point, right? And I think the point is really going back to what we spoke about earlier, asking ourselves, well, what's the point of being a parent, right? What's our goal? Why did we enter into this transaction and this contract to begin with? And, you know, most of us have pretty clear goals on what we want for our children. We want them to be happy. We want them to be successful. We want them to be upstanding citizens. We want them to be kind. And, you know, some of us have the aspiration for them to be emotionally intelligent and, have a secure sense of self and to be compassionate people in the world, and all of these great ideas of how we want to raise our children. But that's very product oriented. It very much talks about what you get at the end. And the danger in that is that we sometimes start to see children as a commodity, and ourselves as factory workers. You know, like we're working in a car factory and there are certain boxes you've got to tick. And in the end, you've either created a good car or you've created a lemon and it goes to the dumpster. And that kind of box ticking and product line thinking is great when it comes to products. We need that kind of quality assurance, and we need, we need
efficiency. We also need.
Yeah, we need the efficiency, exactly. And we need the conformity. We need it to all be uniform. We want all cars to be the same. We want them to all answer certain standards of safety and comfort, etc. So that works with things. The trouble starts when we start to apply it to things that are organic, to people, even to plants, right? In her book, The Gardener and the Carpenter, Alison Gopnik talks about the difference between a gardener and a carpenter, and how a carpenter is working with an item, with a dead piece of wood, not with something alive, and it's shaping it into its table or it's, a chair. And the carpenter hacks away and works measured, and it's a product line, and, it's forcing this piece of wood into the piece of furniture, and that's beautiful and fine. A gardener can't work that way. A gardener who wants to support the growth of a beautiful, lush garden can't start hacking at the plants and shaping them into what he wants them to be. He needs to tend to the environment. He needs to tend to the soil. He needs to make sure there are nutrients and water and sun. He needs to make sure that they're not being encroached on by other plants or by animals. So he's supportive, but he isn't controlling. A rose develops. Whether or not the gardener's there, the rose develops. The rose has its own life, its own unique signature. So the gardener can either support it by giving it better nutrients, a better soil, and protecting its sun and rain, or not. But it can't force it to be a rose the way a carpenter can force a piece of wood to be a table. And that's what we kind of miss out on in parenting for the product line, is that we lose the relationship of a living organic creature when we start to hack away at our children and form them and mold them and mesh them into what we want them to be. I want them to be a Harvard grad. I want them to be happy. I want them to be healthy. We have all these kind of boxes to tick. But parenting really is much more about relationship and much more about, tending and supporting and realizing that there's only so much we can do. A rose will develop as the rose develops. Each one is going to be uniquely different. You can't treat a rose the way you can treat a eucalyptus tree or the way you can treat a cacti. They need different things. They thrive in different conditions. They have different types of beauty and different defense mechanisms. And so I think that's where peaceful, unconscious, and respectful parenting comes in, is in knowing our role, in knowing what we can and cannot do, or what we should and should not do, and in the price that we pay when we don't know that role. Because I think that the price we pay when we hack at our children and form them and mold them into a product is the price of the relationship. Because then as adults, maybe we've succeeded, maybe we've created a Harvard grad, but have we maintained connection? Do we still, does that child still trust us, look to us, want love and connection with us? Or are they calling us every other month just to tick the box that they called mom? It's a question of where we end up in terms of what meaning we have in their lives. And I think for us as parents, we want to have meaning to them. We want to be someone, someone who is really, really is loved by them, not just respected because we're their parents, and not just grateful because we fed them. So I think for me, that's kind of the deeper answer to why peaceful parenting.
I can just listen to you all day long. It's so profound. I love that. Now I understand why you said that you're philosophical.
Yeah, well, these are other people's ideas. I'm just bringing them to you.
No, it's so beautiful because I mean, like my husband and I, we think and talk about this a lot too, because it's really difficult, to raise humans. And we knew, I'm very much like you. I knew that if I choose to do so, I want to do this like for real. Like I really want to take this as an opportunity to give these people, a really good start in life. But, I never even thought of the opportunity that it gives me, the parenting gave me and would give me to learn about myself as a human being in the world. Like I never even thought of it like that. I thought, they're going to be my kids and I will teach them. So it was very much like this, gardener approach. I felt like I was a carpenter, right? Yeah. So yeah, it's such a good, I love that distinction between a carpenter and the gardener. Like it's so beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, and her book, it's not my idea, and her book is absolutely beautiful. I highly recommend reading it. It's really,
Who is the author?
Alison Gopnik. I hope I'm saying that correctly. I do believe so. But the book is called The Gardener and the Carpenter.
I'll definitely, I'll link to that in the show notes.
Fantastic. Yes. And yeah. And there are a lot of thinkers who write about this, Dr. Peter Gray, Alfie Kohn, Ken Robinson, Dr. Shafali, who you mentioned, Dr. Dan Siegel, a lot of amazing writers who all kind of come at this in a different direction, some from the neuroscience, some from the psychology, some from the evolution, but just understanding our role as parents and realizing that children aren't empty vessels that we fill up with knowledge.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. So it's a powerful idea.
It is. Wow. All right. So on this show, I talk a lot about health, nutrition, feeding. And in my feeding program, it's called Teach Your Kids to Eat Vegetables with Love and Good Sense. I use the term conscious feeding, and it basically means feeding our children with patience and love. And not only, to shove that broccoli down their throats. And I know that, at the end of the day, you're tired, you're exhausted. You just want them to eat, and you want them to eat healthy because you're a good parent. But it's hard because a lot of the time you are confronted with resistance. So this respectful parenting approach is very much tied into this, into how we feed our children. So I was wondering if we could talk a little bit about how we can apply this approach with regards to feeding and help our children to be more open to trying new things and trying new foods.
Yeah, totally. And I'm sure you know a lot more about this than I do. So I don't know if I'm so qualified to speak on this on your show, but
yeah, definitely. I'm curious to know your perspective.
Yeah, well, one of the people who I've learned from in this space is Ellen Satter and her division of responsibility, right? So I'm sure you've touched on that, but we very much kind of go by that, where, it's my responsibility to provide the food and to choose when and where we eat. And then my children's responsibility to choose if they're eating it and how much. But I have to say, it is hard to stay that course, because when you see your child choosing the same type of food group again and again, or, you're worried that your child isn't getting enough nutrients, etc., you really can feel that urge to coerce, to force, to manipulate, to bribe. And I get it. I really do get it. But I think where the conscious parenting comes in here is first and foremost, one of the greatest tools of conscious parenting is modeling, is going inwards within ourselves and fixating less on changing the other person, which ultimately we can't do, and more on focusing on ourselves. So if you're not eating your vegetables, if you aren't working out, if you aren't drinking enough water, if you're pigging out on fast food or on, sugar, please don't expect your children not to, kind of thing. So I think the first thing is really, even behind closed doors, even when your children don't see you, I believe that energetically you have to be authentic and you have to put out what you're really doing. So I would even step way back from that and say, first of all, go through a process with yourself and ask yourself if you're really treating your body right. And then the second thing that I find very powerful is the fact that I have buying power. That is one area of control I absolutely have, and I exercise very firmly in my home. And I think that many parents say to me, well, I can't stop him eating the candy. Like they say to me, I can't stop him being on the iPad. And I'm like, well, he didn't buy the iPad, right? He didn't buy the candy. Like you're giving your consent by creating your environment. And I'm a big believer in controlling the environment and not the child. So that goes back to the division of responsibility, but really focusing on offering the foods, whatever diet it is that you subscribe to, but offering the foods that you feel you want your child to eat, whether it's at snack time, whether it's at meal time. So that's another thing that I think is highly important. And then I think the third thing is, and there are many more, but I think the third thing, and you touched on this, is the atmosphere that we create around meals is critical, right? I think many of us grew up in homes where someone was staring at our plate, where there was punishment, where you had to finish everything on your plate, where you had to try new foods even if they made you gag, where you were shamed if you ate too much or too little, or where food was used as an emotional, bribery, right? Oh, you're sad, come and eat some ice cream. So just, it takes a lot to break those links and to realize that, I'm still going through this process as an adult, really coming into a relationship with food where food is simply there to nourish our bodies. Full stop. End of story. Not there to please someone else, not there to make you feel better, not there to distract you from the work that you have to do. None of those things. Not there so that your aunt, Millie, will be happy that you tried her stew. It just isn't about any of those things. It's purely a physical nourishment of our body. And when I think when we are able to just sit down at a meal and focus more on the conversation than on the food, then it becomes far less stressful, right? So if you sit down at your meal and you have some pre-prepared questions like, hey, how was everyone's day? Or what are you looking forward to this week? Or, even conversations about whatever, your family vacation or whatever it was, and just having the food there and letting everyone do their thing and just trusting that, they'll eat what they eat and just offering it gently. For me, that seems like a better route. And I'll just say one more thing that I've experienced with my kids is that when I am trying to get my children to try something new, sometimes I'll see that, I really think they could, and I really think they'd like it, and I really want them to. So my typical default would be, you have to try this, try some, etc., etc. But what I found is if I just talk to them very directly and very honestly, and I say to them, listen, you really don't have to try this. It's your body and you get to decide. I just want to tell you, I think it's delicious and I think you'll like it. I teach them the science where the more you're exposed to a taste, the more likely you are to like it. And so I teach them that it's worth trying because they might discover something new that they love and enjoy. And you'll see even with a 4-year-old, they have that level of logical thinking where they can think, you know what, mom trusts me. I don't have to do this. No one's forcing me. But she thinks it's a good idea. And maybe I'm old enough now to have developed new taste buds to have liked it. Maybe I can make this work for me. And suddenly the empowerment is with them. And I find that, for me, at least with my kids, that's something that's been more effective than any of the pushing I've ever done.
Right. Yeah. And thank you for these perspectives. I think they're all amazing. And I think we all, as moms and parents, we've noticed that the more pressure there is on something, the less willing they are to, and the less open they are to trying, even to kind of, to try and to do what we want them to do. I just want to expand more about the division of responsibility. So for those of you who don't know what that is, it's a model that was developed by Eileen Satter, and it goes like this. So there is a division, literally, of responsibility between the parent and the child in feeding. And so we as parents are responsible for what we're feeding them. So you spoke about the buying power that we have. So it is our responsibility because we are deciding what we are buying and what we are putting in, what we are allowing into our homes, into our fridges and pantries and all of that. And then where. So that goes to talking about the boundaries with regards to where children are allowed to eat, right? So for us, for example, my kids know we only eat either in the kitchen table or in the dining table. Like they know that they're not allowed to walk with food around the house and like, up and down. This is not happening here. And also when, like, so it's up to us to create boundaries around the timing. So it is up to us to tell them, that there is breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then that there are also snacks in between, because it gives them the sense of safety and security that, they will be fed and someone is looking after them. So their needs are being very much looked after. So this is our responsibility as parents. And then our children's responsibility is whether they eat what we serve them and also how much. And I think the problems begin when we crossed our boundaries, when we are trying to force them to eat more or how much to eat. And that's when I think problems start. So just wanted to expand that more about that, because some people might not really understand what we mean by division of responsibility, which I think it's a brilliant model.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So, okay. So you have the Present Play membership. Can you talk about that and also how can parents benefit, and how will that help them have a more, an open, more connected relationship with their child?
Sure, yeah. So I launched the Present Play membership January 2016. So it's just been a year. We've just celebrated our first year in the membership. The membership is it's a monthly model. People pay by the month, and members are basically they have a lot of different benefits. So one of the things is that I produce weekly videos that are only in Present Play. So they get weekly content that is unique to the membership. I'll talk about that in a moment. Another key component of the membership is the supportive Facebook group. And there are members who aren't on Facebook, but those who are really benefit from being in a supportive community. Unfortunately, I found that most of the moms groups that I've joined, most of the parenting groups that I've joined have had a lot of judgment and a lot of guilt attached to them. And it's been hard to share openly and to be vulnerable and to get advice and to celebrate diversity of parenting. So if you join a respectful parenting group or a peaceful parenting group or an attachment parenting group, you can often feel shamed or shunned or like an outsider or an imposter because you don't subscribe to every single one of their, rules. And what's very important for me in parenting is that it should be guilt-free, and that we should celebrate how diverse this experience is and how different it can be. And in Present Play, there are over 45 countries represented. Mm-hmm. So, and every religion. So you can imagine how diverse the parenting experience is there. So that's a really beautiful thing that happens there. And then I interview experts every month. So we speak, we enrich our lives in that way, et cetera. But the core content of Present Play, the focus and the reason that I launched it is, well, it kind of has two promises. Okay. So the first is prioritizing play. And really learning how to craft an environment and a schedule and a daily flow that prioritizes and reclaims play as the pillar of childhood. Because to me, play has been under siege by many of the cultures that we live in, especially in the USA, you see this, but not only there. Even recesses in school are shorter, school days are longer, school years are longer. At home, we're seeing more and more screen time and less outdoor time, less and less playtime, to the extent that play simply isn't on the agenda for childhood anymore. And I'm a big advocate for unstructured play, for children having long stretches, hours to play every single day, indoors and outdoors. And I think we've kind of lost that art to the great detriment of our children. Across the board, play has been proven to improve every single facet of our children's lives that we care about. Their emotional health, their physical health, their academic success. These things are huge, and it's free. It's free. It doesn't need any tutoring or structure or anything. You don't even need toys for your kids to play. And yet we're being bombarded by advertising and marketing messages that you need this, Baby Einstein CD and this, tutoring program. And you need more and more and more. And And I'm on a mission, it's kind of the anti-Christmas. I'm on a mission to say less is more, minimize all of that, declutter your space, design for true play. And in Present Play, we talk about, I have a video on YouTube about this, but the 3 play zones or the 4 play zones. So having a space for messy play, inviting back art into our lives, having a space for deep focused play. So encouraging children to seep into their flow, whether it's Lego or dolls or whatever that is. Having a space for movement. Often we live in places where we're indoors much of the time. We know that the obesity is terribly on the rise, and much of it can be solved by the environment. Having a home that that supports movement, or getting outside a lot, and having a quiet zone, which I my background is design, so I think we communicate by how we design our spaces. I think we communicate and we inform our children's behavior. So having a zone that is dedicated to connecting, to emotional conversations. I would leave the timeouts away. I wouldn't go for timeouts, but I would definitely go for time-ins and having that space to connect and to cuddle. So we talk about how to cultivate those, and we go a lot deeper. We talk about, parental guilt, parental shame, overcoming isolation, overcoming our insecurities. And really, I guess, at the end of the day, the mission is for us all to feel not only good enough, certainly good enough, but also really empowered, really like we're rocking this, we're doing the very best we can with what we have. And then that's just great. I don't like this conversation around parenting of, feeling like we're victims, feeling like we can't get it right, feeling like there's no way to triumph. It's what we're doing, and it's what we're spending the largest portion of our life on, and our finances and everything. So, can we at least enjoy it a little bit along the way, and can our children enjoy it too? So yeah, that's the mission of the Present Play membership.
I love it, because I think the core of it is the realization that the biggest gift we can give them and us is the gift of time. And when we're present with them, it means we're giving them time. So I think it's amazing. Can you also talk a little bit about the benefits of boredom? Because I know it's sort of like, yes, it is up to us to create the space for them to play, but can you also talk a little bit about the benefits of just doing nothing?
Absolutely. Anyone who follows a child around who, a typical elementary school kid, if an adult had to go through the rigors that child goes through, had to show up to work in the way that these children have to show up for school, and then for their after school activities, and then for their weekend activities, and then for their homework activities, and for their home chores, and all the while they're also not supposed to ever be sad or cry or be frustrated. We would go crazy. I mean, the expectations and the pressures that we have on a typical child today are sometimes completely delusional and highly dysfunctional, really. And I think we've created a culture of more, of filling, right? Of creating a product for every kind of pain, of comfort, of pleasure, of immediate gratification, of consumerism and commercialism and materialism. And we talk a lot about more, about getting more, about doing more, about productivity, about filling our house with stuff, filling our time with activities, making everything very fun and shiny and exciting. And all of that could be great if there was a balance. And there isn't. I think people need both the productivity and the relaxation, both the surges of energy and the downtime. You look at our digestive system and how our metabolism works. If we were eating all the time, and some of us do, we suffer terrible health consequences. But that's kind of what we're doing to our brains and our souls, eating all the time, providing stimulation all the time. And there isn't the time to digest or to rest the metabolism and to re-energize the cells, to replenish. No machine can work like that. Cars need to be refueled. They need to have services, etc., etc. But we kind of expect that of our kids. It's go, go, go. And it's a shame, because boredom or just white space in their physical space, white space in their schedule, time when, I don't have anything for you to do right now. I don't have an entertainment for you. I'm not going to put you in front of something and delight you. The world doesn't need to show up and make your life interesting at every moment, because your threshold of stimulation becomes so high that we can't satiate it. And then we're surprised when they fidget, right? Then we're surprised when they can't focus on a, whatever it is, a math textbook. But we've come at them with all the shinies and all the glamour and all the glitter at such a high level that, we've created that monster within them. So I think having long pockets of boredom, days, think about the summer days you probably had as a child. Think about the afternoons when no one was home and you were by yourself and you just had to figure out what to do with your time. That time was invaluable. That time was the time when you were actually creative, actually in touch with the world, actually metabolizing all the things you've learned and experienced so that you can come back with renewed energies and be productive. And yeah, I think the gift of boredom is huge, and is so missing in so many homes across the world today. I see it very profoundly in the United States. I'm on the East Coast, and there is a big intensification of childhood here. Very, very intense. And when I went to visit some schools and to see open days, and one of the things the teachers kept saying is, we make them think they're playing, but really they're learning. And it struck me as such a sad statement, that we're now tricking children into our agendas. We've robbed them even of their play, even of their flow. I come from a creative discipline, and my work today is still creative. And anyone who creates anything, any entrepreneur, any writer, anyone really knows the value of process and of flow, and how you need time and space to get into it. And if someone's measuring you and evaluating you and writing down how you're doing, say you want to write a book. I always say you want to write a book. If you've got someone over your shoulder saying, oh, what a nice book you're writing. Oh, what chapter are you writing now? Oh, I like how you did that. And writing down, so that they can tell your husband afterwards how you've done and what you're doing. You can't possibly write a book. I mean, really, you can't. And our children could be writing books every day. If we let them, you'll see, all of us as parents have experienced this, hopefully, where you see a child sink into a deep flow. And then we have these messages. Teach them that that's the color blue. Show them how to build the tower better. Show them how to do it correctly, right? We jump in with our teaching to fill that empty vessel, to fill their time with meaning, to make it productive, to make it measurable and something we can evaluate. And that's where we rob them of the true benefits of that time. So when we just leave them to it, just step away, step away, look away, let them freaking be, then we respect that process and we respect that humanity on that level. Yes. I was waiting for you to say that. Exactly. We respect their humanity. It's so true. Because I know when I grew up, a child was just like a silly little thing, let them kind of grow up, and I know it's so true. Thank you so much. All right, Avital, it's been such a pleasure. Before I let you go, I have 4 questions I ask all my, all the people I interview. You're ready for this? Okay, so the first question is, because this show is all about inspiring mothers to thrive as women and mothers, I like to call it being a goddess. And I'm curious to know, how are you being a goddess in your own life? How do you take care of yourself, your soul, your body? What are some of your non-negotiables? Yeah, that's such a great question, because it's something I'm really working to solidify right now. One of the things I care a lot about doing is yoga and meditation. So it's not something I've ever managed to do very consistently, but I've got, if you could see behind my computer, you'd see my 30-day challenge up on the wall. 10 minutes or 15 minutes a day of yoga is something that I'm committing to. I usually do it just before bed because that's when it happens. So that's one big thing for me. I also listen to meditations as I'm falling asleep, so I have a few moments to clear my mind, etc. I've started doing, this is a really weird one, but I have to share it with everyone. I've started doing these like anti-aging face massages that you do for yourself. You like just kind of like stretch out your face with oil, and it's a 10-minute thing, and it's just like after the shower and you're using your creams and brushing your hair and whatever, and then you spend like 10 minutes caring for your skin. It feels so goddess-like. That's something.
What oil are you using?
I like to use I have a few different oils, but I like argan oil, and I like the bio oil product, which is like, I've used that throughout pregnancy. It's an anti-stretch mark oil.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just kind of pure organic oils for that. Another thing I like to feel like a goddess is put on what's it called, aromatherapy, throughout the home, especially with my kids or something, even when not, just putting those smells. It's kind of like a sensual reminder to treat yourself well. Yeah, that kind of thing.
That's amazing. I love that. Okay, so what advice does your now mommy self would have given to your pre-mommy self?
I find that question, I've been asked that question before, and I find it kind of hard because I feel like you have to go through the process you have to go through.
Right.
But I think probably just really just to enjoy it, just to invite in a sense of trust. And you know what, maybe another thing would be is to focus on your relationship with your husband more than so much on becoming a parent. I think that's something that, it's taken us time to navigate it. I'm sure it will continue to. And I think that don't get lost in your identity of motherhood, but step back and find that time to connect and to bring your partner in to the process, so that it doesn't create that kind of disconnect that a lot of parents feel and that I felt for a time.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a big one. Thank you. All right. So I like to keep it real and show listeners that even though someone is an expert in one area, they might be struggling with other things. So what are some of your current challenges as a woman, wife, or mother?
Oh my God, totally. I struggle all the time. I struggle in the area that I'm talking about, peaceful parenting. But I struggle in your area of expertise. I really struggle with understanding what is healthiest for us food-wise. Something that I feel very vulnerable and confused about. We're kind of vegan almost. And I worry about all of the conflicting scientific advice I read. And my husband's a doctor, so he has his whole evidence-based bent, and I kind of tend a little bit more holistic. And so, yeah, that's something that kind of, I get confused about. Medicines, vaccinations, foods, the health world is something that I don't feel confident about.
Yeah, it's definitely a big one. All right. So any last advice for new moms?
Last advice for new ones. Yeah, one thing that I would say is that parenting, good parenting, connected parenting, and relaxed, calm parenting does not come naturally. And almost nothing about it comes naturally. And I think that that's one of the myths that is most painful for new moms and that induces the most shame, that breastfeeding should be natural, that birth should be natural, that connecting and bonding with your baby should be natural, that knowing how to discipline or handle tantrums should be natural. This idea that if it doesn't come naturally to you, there's some kind of defect within you. And I think when you really look around the world, the truth is that what comes naturally to most people is cycles of dysfunction and even abuse. What comes naturally to me is to yell, to punish, to bribe, to reward. That's my natural state. So I think it's just don't think that it needs to come naturally. Expect it to be an investment. Just invest in your education. I really believe in investing in our education as parents. I think that too often people say to me things like, oh, the experts are just trying to play into my insecurities, or I don't need a parenting book to tell me how to do this, or, and I think you learn how to drive, you took a course, you learn how to do your profession, you're investing in growing and learning in every other domain in your life. I'm sure of it. How can it be that in this relationship that is so critical and crucial to all of us, we think we don't need as much help as we can possibly get? I'm not saying all the advice out there is good advice. Absolutely not. Exercise your intuition. Exercise your filter. Don't take it all in. But but invest in the education and don't expect it to come naturally.
Yes, this is so true. Thank you so much, Avital. You are such a magical woman and a mother. Thank you so much for being true to yourself and for sharing. I know when you said that, I struggle with with what I teach. It's because what we teach is what we need for ourselves. But thank you so much for sharing it with me, sharing it with the world. We all need this. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you, Dorit. Thank you so much for having me here. This has been so much fun.
Thank you for listening to the Health Begins with Mom show. I love hearing from you, so please post your comments and questions over at healthbeginswithmom.com/podcast. If you love the show, please share it on social media and in your real life with other moms who might enjoy this content. And if you have a burning question or topic you'd like me to hit on the show, just drop me a line at dorit@healthbeginswithmom.com. And if you love the show and really want to support it, please go to iTunes, write a review, and subscribe. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you next time. Much love and many blessings.